regarding the recording, if there is something or some of you that don't want to appear in this recording, please switch off your video. Otherwise, we will do the recording for the colleagues that want to have it. Moreover, we observed, because we are in a modern times, or we are living modern times, that there are people that wanted to or they sent some AI agent to be part of this session, but we will not admit them to be as participant in our meeting. Please understand our opinion about it. For those who are joining for the first time in this series, we'd love to share a bit about its purpose. EMCC Romania's strategic focus includes mentoring, rooted in sharing wisdom, seeking role models, fostering mutual learning, and cultivating equal power partnerships that honor diversity. Also, team coaching, approached systemically with respect for past generations and a commitment to building of future ones. And supervision, also emphasizing relational, systemic, and ethical maturity. This vision has inspired us to seek learning opportunities across cultures. We began in Canada, exploring coaching for indigenous communities, continued in Africa with Ubuntu coaching and team coaching, and now we are excited to delve into Asian culture. We are deeply grateful to all our colleagues who have supported us along this journey and to each of you for being part of it. With that, it's my pleasure to pass the scene to Julie, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Diana. Sorry. Yes, I would like to introduce Juri Tsurumi, who is the speaker today, representing Asia Pacific and Japan in particular. So Juri is an English and Japanese bilingual executive and leadership coach. She's a consultant and a facilitator based in Tokyo, Japan. She supports clients in the shaping of agile global leaders, the building of confident teams, and the capture of innovation. Juri has a real specialisation in the world of ethics, which she'll bring to you today, but she also gives back a lot to society through her writings and through her EMCC ambassadorship. And for example, in her current role as EMCC Ambassador for Japan, she's expanding recognition and membership of EMCC Asia Pacific in Japan. She's working to create social responsibility, and impact across Asia through rolling out an initiative with the co-president of EMCC Asia Pacific, which is focused on the Mercedes-Benz Fellowship called Be Visioneers. And she's also promoting ethics by co-facilitating with another ambassador monthly workshops on ethics and coaching. So delighted today, pardon me, as Australian ambassador to introduce Juri to you, who will take you through what will no doubt be a wonderful presentation. Over to you, Juri.
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all. Thank you to Diana, Julie, Vlad, all the rest of the wonderful people who have allowed this to happen. And I am very grateful to be here. It is a 90-minute session. There is a little bit more of my speaking in the beginning, and then there will be breakout rooms for you to really try and dive into what I've shared today. So for a start, let me share my presentation, and I hope people can see this. All okay? Wonderful. So the title is Stepping Stones Between Coaching and Japanese Ethics. And there are two aspects of this which I'd like to share. And one is it does say coaching, and I do refer to coaches, but please take it in a wider way that includes mentors or supervisors or anything all across in between. So that's one. And the second one is there are many ideas and concepts that I like to share. And it's not inclusive, it's not exclusive in the sense of it's not only about Japan. I can see how so much of what I'm going to share also arises and surfaces in other religions, philosophies, countries. So that's two things I wanted to start off with. And I also want to share a little bit about EMCC Asia Pacific, where I'm based, and some others, and some people, some familiar faces I've seen as well. So thank you very much for coming in, and many new faces. Thank you very much for coming. EMCC Asia Pacific, we're pushing the leading edge of best practice coaching, mentorship, and supervision. And this is from the website for EMCC Asia Pacific region, or APR. And when we look at the values of EMCC APR, I had a look at this and I thought there were some words that kind of stood out for me as I'm presenting, and some words that sort of stood out for me, for you who will be listening and contributing, participating in the dialogue. And what those are these three for me. So today, having an opportunity to talk about Japanese ethics and how we can bridge what Japanese ethics can teach us about coaching and bridging coaching and ethics. That's the cultural diversity, excellence. I hope these opportunities always tries to elevate the standards and the research and the learnings, and social responsibility, as Julie had kindly shared. It's very the passion of mine that I hope kind of seeps in from what I'll be talking about today. And for you, it's first of all, the pioneering spirit. And I like the last word in the last sentence, it's the reflective practice. So I hope that this session will allow you to sit back and have a reflective practice of who you are as a person and who you are, for example, as a coach. And in addition to that, the second one close to you, it talks about, again, in the bottom, it says, ways that feel authentic. And I think that's those two words are also really important. And I hope that you continue to feel authentic as you listen to and participate in this session or seminar. So that is a little bit about EMCC APR. And now about myself and ethics, really. It's recent, relatively recent. My first profession is a lawyer or a solicitor. So I had come across ethics. I have been in business for many years. So ethics or compliance or governance, these are words that have come through consistently in my professional life and hopefully private life as well. But it really is recently where you just see things happening, and I'm questioning, how can I contribute to a more sustainable planet? And that had lured me into the world of ethics and Japanese ethics. And it's because hopefully ethics is a lens in better understanding why we act in such colorful variations, and how we can better understand why we act in the way we do. So what is ethics? Kind of looked in and think, because these words are in our language, day-to-day language. But for me, I never really had space to really reflect on, okay, so what is it specifically? What does it actually mean? And it's like a rabbit hole. But we do know that it does come from the Greek word ethos, which means character or custom. And one of the descriptions for ethics in the Ethical Coach's Handbook is ethics is often defined as morals, values, beliefs, and principles to help guide and support decision-making and justify actions. And there are many descriptions and definitions of ethics, and this is one of them. Oops. Now, today, these are the three main buckets that I'd like to talk to you about. One is just unfolding, just sharing what Japanese ethics is about. And it's just very large and wide and deep. So it's really just an introduction, but hopefully you can have a flavor of what Japanese ethics is about. And then hopefully tying it in to the foundations of coaching, primarily context, because we talk about appreciating the context of our clients and appreciating the context of where we are. And then language, what kind of language do the clients use when they're in conversation? And similarly, what do we say? What kind of language do we use? And then finally, co-creating relationships. Okay. And then finally, this is a nice kind of way to just say, add another lens to your coaching practice, which is also about, hopefully there's some learnings from today. What were they? What were some ahas? What might be some specific action steps you might want to take after this session? So there are these three main buckets I'd like to go through today with you. And now I'd like to start off by just sharing some scenarios of some behaviors that could shed light into how Japanese people behave and what it means to be Japanese, or yeah, basically how Japanese people behave. So how would you describe the Japanese? Now, have you seen this before? Perhaps some of you have seen this. It's the Mount Fuji. It is the highest mountain in Japan. It's an active volcano, so it will erupt again at some moment in time. The last time it erupted is about 300 years ago. But it's very important, and it's also a representation of part of who we are as Japanese. It's listed in the World Heritage List of UNESCO because it has inspired so many artistic expressions and just the philosophy of actually ethics. And I will be sharing this with you. So there's the Mount Fuji, and then there's the bullet train. It started in 1964. It's a high-speed train. It's really well known for punctuality, and gosh, it is really punctual. And then the comfort. And what's interesting is when you look at the nose, at the head of the Shinkansen, the engineers were having some trouble actually finding out how such a high-speed train can actually, with the pressure, air pressure and noise pressure, how it can go into lots of tunnels. And the engineer actually looked at a kingfisher bird and how it dives into the sea. And that actually, he got his hint from the kingfisher's beak and head for the design of the head of the Shinkansen. So just little information. And I will, as I share these images, they do come from Wikipedia, especially Wikimedia Commons. And so you'll see both because I'd like to share the credits for that. Here's another images, or several images of Japan, more of the urbanized Japan. And these are all Tokyo. On the left, you see the Tokyo Tower and then the Rainbow Bridge. And then on the right-hand side, it's an image of Shibuya, like a hub of where lots of the media and young people actually come and enjoy shopping too, I'm afraid, or yes, shopping, definitely. So now for the scenario, what I'd like to share is, first of all, this is football or soccer, and the players are called Samurai Blues. And the one specific example is about the FIFA World Cup that was held in Qatar. And it's actually not the players that I want to talk about, but it's the fans. And what is it about the fans that I want to talk about? Well, maybe some people have seen this before or read this in the news, is that you see the fans actually after the play has finished, where they have these garbage bags and they start collecting the garbage. And this came it was in the news and it spread. And these are just some comments that I picked up. So in the BBC, Scott North, who is a professor of sociology at Osaka University in Japan, said, tidying up is a way Japanese people demonstrate pride in the way of, or pride in their way of life. Another fan said, What we're taught is that leaving things cleaner than the way you found it is atarimae, or is obvious, and that we should always express gratitude. And this is actually the point of being clean, or trying to make our environment clean, is actually very important. And it stems actually from the ethical ways of how we behave as people in Japan. And as I mentioned at the very end, again, what I'm saying is not exclusive. I would think that lots of other cultures have similar ideas and attitudes, but there is a history of why the way we work and the way we behave is the way it is, and I'd like to share that with you today. And so some words that come up by looking at this scenario is purity, to be clean, to be grateful. And so the person who is cleaning up had said, I want to be grateful for the stadium. I want to respect my environment. I want to make it clean so that it's respectful. Practice versus theory. I'll definitely go into more of this, but practice is just literally going and picking up the garbage. So it's doing it as opposed to not just thinking about it. And then the collective relationships, doing it together, doing it as a representation of wanting to show gratitude, for example. And these are all foundations of Japanese ethics. Now, where then do these come from? And it comes from many areas. When we think about Japanese ethics, I think we can bucket it into 3 different groups. And one is the indigenous Japanese ethics or religion. Or philosophy, which is Shinto, which is what I'm going to talk about now. The other one is Asian influence, and we have Asian influences from Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism. They're also really important, and I'm also going to share about Confucianism later on. And the third one is Western influence, and this especially in the Meiji era, which is from 1868 until 1912, but obviously even after 1912, where there was a lot of Western influences that came into Japan that had really been building up on what ethics is about. And as in other societies, ethics is a moving thing. It evolves, it deepens, it matures, the different definitions. So, but it's these 3. And so the first one is the indigenous Japanese Shinto. Okay, and this is, so this is the credit. So what is Shinto? As I started and shared, it's an indigenous Japanese religion, sometimes called philosophy. And we think it's around 300 BC that it started. And I say we think because I will share in my next slide, but it is not written down. There are no scripture. It's not codified. So it's been passed on from generations to generations. And finally, there was a book that referred to Shinto, and the book we said around 300 BC. So, and that was that book, Nihon Shiki. It was in the 8th century, actually. So 8th century AD when it came out. So, hundreds of years afterwards. But we think it's around 300 BC. It's polytheism, which means that it's not just one god, but it's many different gods. And it's not, when we think of God, we all have different and similar definitions of gods, but I would like to include spirits as well, because it's not just the God, but it's also the spirits as well. And we call it kami, Kami. So there are many kamis. And where are these kamis? The third one, animism. We have a kami in objects, in places, in creatures, human beings, animals. They all have spirits and gods. So your PC, your iPhone will have a kami. Your plant will have a kami. So it's everywhere. And finally, it's nature religion. So nature is very important. It's the foundation of Shintoism. So nature embodies divinity. And maybe another word to describe that is perhaps deep ecology. Maybe that's a term that you might have heard about before. So that is what Shinto is about. And of course, there's a lot of more definitions about, okay, what specifically is it? But this is sort of to start you off on what it is. And how then do people practice Shinto? So as I mentioned, it's not codified. There's nothing that's written. So it's very behavior based. Right? So it's based on lots of practices. And maybe you've heard, like in the Olympics, we have judo, right? So it's the first one, the do here, or the way. It's the way of doing things. And this do it means the way. It also means street, and it can mean other things as well. But the thing with these Chinese characters is you can have different ways of articulating it. So it could be do, or it could be to, to. So for Shinto, it's to, but for judo, as you can see, the character is the same as do. But these are specific, as you can see, the mannerisms. For example, when people go in on in the what you call this, the sporting grounds for judo, you see people bowing. There are certain ways of doing things when they start doing their judo performances, or what do you call it, the sports. And then sado, which is tea ceremony. It's also their very, very fine ways and practices of doing the tea ceremony. So by doing this over and over again, you slowly begin to appreciate the processes and what these processes mean. And then we have these rituals, for example, and one of it is we have like, for example, a kamidana, which is a sort of this little statue, like a little statue of the shrine itself that is placed in the home, and people will, have some plants, and they would keep it and fresh, and they would pray in front of the kamidana. So there's somewhere they can go to pay their respects to the kami. And then there's lots of different festivals. So, for example, in the fall, we have festivals to thank the kami for the past season's crops, for example. And then we have everyday behaviors. For example, may not every day, but often people go, and I like going to shrines as well and just paying my respects to the kami and to the environment. And then right now, because it's very hot in Japan, we have this way of doing, showing respect and gratitude, and which is uchimizu, which is actually you have people with buckets of water, and then they just, they spill out, or they pour the water on the ground, so that because it's so hot, and you want people who are walking past to have just a little bit of humidity, although it is very hot here, it just to lessen the heat on the ground. And so there are things like that people do for those who are around, not only for me, but for those who are walking by, so they all feel a little bit more at ease from the humidity, for example. So when it comes to Shinto and the practices, it's really focusing on life's pragmatic requirements. For example, Sado, there's a way of people, not now, but before, samurais used to go and have a tea ceremony before they went out and to conquer, and just to really rebalance themselves. And it was a really important aspect of samurais before they went out to their wars. And it was one of their life's pragmatic requirements. So lots of different aspects seep in from these behaviors. And an assumption for Shinto is that we all have the capacity to grow, and character development is foundational for what it means to be human. So yes, it's a religion, and this Shinto shares this philosophy, and it's something that wants us to continuously have agency for our growth and our well-being. Cool. I'd like to say that Shinto is... Hear me?
Please make sure that you have your microphone off when you are entering the session. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So onwards. So Shinto, you could say, is the foundation for Japanese ethics, but certainly a foundation of Japanese ethics. So giving you a little bit more of what Shinto is, then perhaps somebody has already gone to Shinto shrine. So on the left bottom, this is where the gate is, or tori, and then you go in to the complex. Okay. And now what I'd like to share with you, okay, so this is what the tori looks like, and you walk through that, and then you go into the compounds of the Shinto shrine, is this little place here, number 4, which is the chozuya. And now what this is this. And as you can see, what people are doing is they are basically washing their hands. And some people are actually drinking because they want to clarify, they want to purify themselves before they pay their respects, going into the shrine, okay, or sanctuary. Well, the shrine, because it's the sanctuary, you actually can't go inside it. So there are these descriptions as well that tells you what to do, right? And it says, for example, number 3, please drink the water and from your hand and not from the spoon, or I'll just call it a spoon. And then and number 2, it says, please wash your right hand. And then number 1, so I'm sorry, I'm going backwards, but number 1, it says, please wash your left hand. So as you can see, it's very prescriptive. So left hand first, number 2, then you wash your right hand, and then you wash your mouth, and then you stand up the spoon, large spoon, so that others can use it, for example. Right? So, and you can already see from the Shinto shrine that cleanliness is really important. And that kind of ties into why it's natural for people, for these fans, to say, oh, you know, there's some garbage on the floor. I'd like to clean this up, because cleanliness is very important. Okay. So that was number 4. And just to give you a little bit more flavor of what you can see, is this koma-inu. And koma-inu looks like this. So can you see these 2 sort of dog, lion-like statues? Okay. They could be based just before the Haiden, the number 11. This is where actually you go and you pay your respects. And number 13 actually is the sanctuary where the kami is. So people will go here. So just before you go and literally pay your respects, you have this koma-inu, and you go through. And sometimes the koma-inu is actually near the tori, the gate that I just shared earlier. But what they do is that they are guardians. They're protecting the confines, and for the kami to come and reside in the shrines. And what's also interesting is that on the left-hand side, the left-hand kami, komai, the mouth is open. And then the komainu on the right-hand side, the mouth is shut. And what this is saying is that it's saying from the beginning to the end, and it's called ang. So it's the guardians of the beginning until the end as well. And you pass in between this ang. So it's very expansive on how you enter into the complex, and how these komainus are guardians of this place and guardians of us as well. And we often say aun no kokyu, which is like we breathe as if we are aun, which means that we're in absolute synchronicity. Okay? So from the beginning until the end as well. So things, for example, and actually, that word actually I found out is it comes from India, because it comes from, and I would suspect it comes from the Buddhist influence. Right? So, and you will actually see in these complexes as well, you will have Buddhists and Shinto some buildings, for example, in the same complexes as well, right? But anyway, so I thought that might be kind of fun for you to learn and know. And then finally, this is the sanctuary. This is the honden. Okay. So as I had said, because it's not codified, we have these various practices. It's just every day, we start to see how we can show our gratitude, how we can be respectful. One practical way is being to be clean. And by doing that together as a collective, and also the encompassing this deep ecology, this from beginning to end, is just this whole one big thing. And I think one of the things when you read about Shintoism, it is actually a little bit hard to grasp because it's very polar in the way it talks about Shintoism as well. Because, for example, when you talk about good and bad, it's not good versus bad. They say good and bad, for example. It's gray, for example. And so it's quite ambiguous. But because of that, and because it's not written, I think what Shinto is trying to allow us to do is just to continuously, through our actions and being pragmatic about it, really to really appreciate what it is that life is wanting us to think about and to be, and again, as a collective as well. So that's Shinto. Now, I'm going to go into one more scenario, which is about going into a meeting. Okay, so apologies, this is a little bit more business orientated, but it will hopefully give you a description of another way of how Japanese ethics comes about in our day-to-day. So one of it is, as you can see, the bowing. Okay? And when you conduct a business meeting, sure, punctuality is definitely important. Another one is how you address people. And there's these different ways of addressing people. Like somebody that you want to address very politely, you would say sama. And somebody who you want to address, it's a bit like the Mr., Ms., Mrs., etc. But a little bit more colloquial is san. And then sometimes you actually don't have anything that you put after a person's name. So it's, for example, for me, if somebody were to address me, I would say Judy, somebody would say Judy-sama, or somebody would say Judy-san, or they may just say Judy. So depending on who is in this collective, it changes. Okay? So it's not like somebody will always be calling me sama or somebody will always be calling me san. It depends on who you are with. And then there's the bowing. And then there is this, okay, where is the table? How far is it from the door? And the place that has the seat, which is farthest from the door, is where the person who is the most high in seniority will be sitting, and vice versa. You don't sit until the other part. So as you can see, there's a lot of these practices that you're mindful about when you're in a business meeting. And so I'm talking about social hierarchy. And I bring this up because this is coming from Confucianism. So there are aspects of this in Shintoism as well, but a lot of it comes from Confucianism. Confucianism was founded by Confucius 500 BC, and it came to Japan around 480. So it has been some time. But what is really useful about Confucianism and also about Buddhism is actually that it is scripted. So it is codified. And that is what Shinto lacked. And so a lot of the philosophies behind Shintoism were kind of felt and kind of like shown through behaviors, but it was not codified. And Confucianism had codified this in the Analects of Confucius. And so one of the important aspects about Confucianism, amongst many, is the social relationships. That social roles are important. And what this means is it means to respect other people, and it's to use the right linguistic formulation. As I mentioned before, the sama, the san. It's also, for example, in Japanese and in Chinese as well, the family name comes first. So it's Tsurumi, that's my family name. And then my name is Juri. Whereas in English it's Juri Tsurumi, so flips. And then to use the right tone of voice and body language as well. And through all these different layers, you begin to appreciate and acknowledge the social relationships you have with the people around you. And what this does is that it reminds us of being mindful of the status, the social positions, for example, of yourself and the others. It's also extending that. It's just appreciate what the needs and expectations of others are. And it's also to create ultimately the well-being of the society as a whole. And that is what Confucianism, through the social hierarchies used is to create a healthy society. So, Confucianism, as I mentioned, it is codified. So there's the analects of Confucianism, and then how do we practice Confucianism? I've just mentioned this earlier before as well. Okay, so what you say, how you say it, the language that you use, right? The respect that you show for people who are older than you, for example, higher than you in seniority, for example. All of that is ways of behaving and showing the Confucianism philosophy. And then again, for Confucianism, this is the words that was shared, which is the self is an open system, always improving, self-transforming, like the cosmos. Again, you can see the very expansive way of describing this. And again, it's very positive in the sense of there is agency, there is the hope that people can continuously self-transform to grow. Okay. Oops, sorry, hold on. Here we go. So in Stanford Encyclopedia, Confucianism brims with high-minded ideals that have always challenged humanity to realize the highest state of ethical perfection and self-realization. And it's very similar to Shintoism, because this is what was said about Shintoism, that we all have the capacity to grow. Character development is foundational for what it means to be human. And this ties in, hopefully, as you can begin to just connect as well, what Japanese ethics is about, or Asian ethics is about as well. So these are the two scenarios, and I hope that this can start to show why in certain situations Japanese people behave in certain ways. It goes back to the Japanese ethics, and this Japanese ethics through history has been influenced by Shintoism, from Confucianism, and then many others like Buddhism and the Western influences. Now, shifting into coaching, there are 3 areas which I'd like for you to think about for yourself when you are coaching, or when you're mentoring or supervising or supporting. One of it is context, and we talk about context matters. But how much attention are we placing on this as we coach? So we talk about being attentive to the client's context and our context. And when we look at how Japanese ethics has revolved, I think one, for example, is what I've experienced is practice versus theory when it comes to context, and from where I come from and what I've experienced and some of the experiences I've had as a coach, which means that, for example, when I ask clients about, so what is your vision? What is your purpose? It's quite hard for some clients to actually articulate this. It is a concept that they've never really had time to think about, hasn't perhaps even ever crossed their mind. And perhaps you can tie it into the difference between practice and theory, because I would think that having a purpose, the vision, is more conceptual. It's a bit more theoretical. And by articulating that, you put that into practice, obviously. But it's the other way around. So people will do things, for example, and do things because there's a reason for that, but they haven't really backtracked and thought about, so why am I doing that? What is the theory behind that? What is important for me? And so this is just one example of perhaps through the history of, for example, for Japanese people, the history that Japan has gone through, the way ethics has evolved, the way we behave, can actually seep through, and it will seep through in coaching relationships. So that's one example for how can we think about this meaning of we are attentive to the client's context and our context. The second one is language. So how much attention are we placing on this as we coach? And I have maybe about 5 more minutes until, or maybe if not, because I'd love to open up. So now that you can to have the breakout rooms and really kind of sink your your teeth into these concepts. But the second one is language matters. Okay. So again, as a coach, we think about language and how much attention are we placing on this as we coach. So we are attentive to the words the client does and does not say, and we are selective of the words we as coaches do and do not say. Going back to the Japanese. Right? So if we think about, okay, so for example, social hierarchy, or for example, respect, I can think of a situation, for example, with feedback. So for example, if you ask your client, have you received feedback? And the client will often say, no. It's like, oh, can you go and ask for your feedback? And people will also say, I can't do that. I can't do that.
Sorry. Please make sure you have your microphone off. Thank you. Sorry, Juri-san.
It's fine. It's absolutely fine. So again, the way the language has created this social hierarchy, for example, and the respect of others, if you go in a client, a coaching engagement, and you just ask, constructive feedback, can you get some constructive feedback? And you get some pushback, it may actually come from the contextual background of that person and from my person, from what I've experienced, and how that has evolved through the language that we use when we communicate, for example. And I think for another one about language is I actually like to use English at times. So I would do coaching in Japanese, but I would slip in some English in saying it in an English way and not in a Japanese way, because in Japanese you can kind of like ethics is ethics. There's different ways of actually pronouncing English words in a Japanese way. But so it's really being mindful of what language one uses when one is coaching, to see how that can really deepen the coaching that you have with the other person, how clear you are. Like, for example, in Japanese, it's also very high context, which means that that ambiguous way of communicating can have lots of lovely nuances, but at the same time, it can blur things as well. So when is it more appropriate to actually hone in, be very clear, and when is it to push back and be a bit more vague in how you communicate? So all of this, hopefully, are just ways of thinking about how you use your language and how you might want to use language in your coaching practice. Okay, and finally, it's about relationships. So co-creation of relationships. We co-create meaningful relationships. And for this one, for me, it's collective and relationships. For example, when we talk about tying it back into Japanese ethics, it's about, for example, what do you want to achieve through the coaching engagement? For example, I often have people who say, I want to ensure that project something is successful. Or you keep on diving in and say, okay, is there anything else? And then the person might say, oh, I'd like for people to be happy, which are all really lovely things. And then if I ask, okay, so what is it for you that you want to get out of this? People would say, oh, no, not for me. I want to ensure that the people in my team are happy or successful. I want to make sure that this project is successful, and it's harder for them to articulate purely for themselves what they want. And so again, this may come from just in Japan, what the Japanese ethics has been teaching us and guiding us on is to really honor the collective and the people around us, even more so between individual versus collectivity. So these are just examples of what I've also experienced, and perhaps this ties in, which I do think ties in with Japanese ethics. So these are very chunky topics, which I've kind of gone through in about 5 minutes or so. So excuse me for that. But now I would like for you, as I've done a lot of downloading, and thank you for listening, is now to go into breakout rooms and just discuss how much attention are you placing on these as you coach? Context matters. What is the balance between, for example, practice and theory, for example? How is respect showing up, for example? And relationships matter. What is the balance between social relationships versus individual concerns? And then language. How am I really, if it's a main language that you have always been using, perhaps this is an opportunity. You know, is there room for me to think a bit more deeply on how I'm using my language? And some people may say think, some people may say feel. I feel something, or I think something, even little nuances like that, for example. But I'd like for you to just explore these concepts and ideally tie it in with Japanese ethics. Just what I shared today. It's like, oh, I just heard that in Japan they do this, or Japanese ethics, they value this and this. And that's different from what I've experienced, and perhaps it shows up in this way. So is that making some sense? All good? Right. So 15 minutes. Can you kindly make the breakout rooms? And I hope you have a rich conversation, a rich dialogue.
Okay, so I'm going to send the invitation. We have 6 breakout rooms to have a small amount of people in the breakout rooms. Please accept the invitation and we will close the breakout rooms and invite you back in 15 minutes.
And remember to pause the recording.
Okay. Right. So just I actually enjoy these stepping stones because it's sort of an indication, it's just a visualization of wanting to go somewhere else or wanting to understand something else, and it's kind of far away. But if we have these stepping stones, we can actually achieve it. And I hope that this is what we can do today. And the two areas which I would like to dive into, and where I dived into today, is first is the deeper meaning of ethics. So yes, ethics can be defined, it is defined as morals, values, beliefs, and principles, and it can help to guide our decision-making and justify our actions. Great. And it can also come from the Greek ethos, the definition of character and customs, and the self-realization, the character development, self-transforming, which also is the base for Japanese Chinese ethics, that we have the capacity to grow, that we can keep on growing. And I hope that ethics can include this definition as well. So that's the first one. And then the second one is then how can, if we learn about different approaches to ethics, and hopefully Japanese ethics, just an introduction today, can deepen our appreciation of what these mean, like context matters, or relationships matter, or language matters, you know, and that could really give you some like hints and really interesting journeys into what these concepts mean for you. And then finally, just as we are with EMCC, I'd like to tie it in with the Global Code of Ethics. So hopefully what we've done here, all of us together, is that we are all engaging in professional development activities and contributing to a better self-awareness and elevating the professional standards, and really trying to see how we can create a sustainable future. So I kind of add that in. But... So we could go into, if you don't mind, just doing one more, because I think the 3 groups could be helpful. So maybe just even, maybe if it's 10 minutes, then we have about 8 minutes in the end, or maybe we can just say 8 minutes. Can we do an 8-minute breakout room? So this is just reflecting on what we went through today. What were your new learnings? What were your new ahas? What are some steps you might want to take after having just listened to this presentation? Is that making some sense? Yeah. So just 8 minutes, and then we'll come back, and then we can have hopefully a really nice discussion dialogue with all of us together. Okay, so welcome back, and thank you for contributing to which I'm sure was a very rich conversation in many ways, I hope. And so what is left for me now to do is actually to close the presentation, primarily so that the recording finishes, and just to capture the closing. So for that, I would like to say again, thank you very much. I hope that there has been some learnings. It was a bit content heavy in the beginning so that we can create a foundation of what Japanese ethics is about. And then we looked at 3 foundations in coaching, which is context, language, and relationships. And hopefully we can tie the 2 together, or tie these in together. So with that, I want to say but please hang on and stay. It's not that this is finishing. We're not closing yet, because we still have our open forum, the plenary, where we can go and have a collective dialogue. But I'd like to finish off the recording. And for those who are listening to the recording, thank you very much. Okay.